All right, jumping right into it here. Question number one. Choose the most accurate answer. If the value of Pfizer stock rises sharply today, this is an indication of what? And this is likely because what? All right, so if they are buying the stock today, or rather, if the value of Pfizer stock rises sharply today, what that means is that investors think that Pfizer will be more profitable in the future, okay? So it doesn't really tell you anything about their profitability right now at this moment, right? It doesn't tell you about their profitability today. It's more about future profitability. So it means that people are buying the stock today, and it means that people expect them to have higher future profitability. Remember that stocks are forward-looking. So a company like Tesla is not profitable. They're not going to be profitable today, but their stock has a really high market cap because people expect their future profits to be high. Question number three. Today is September 3rd, 2021. Everyone already knows that Home Depot is going to launch a new product on November 1st that's going to be really profitable. What is going to happen? Well, since everybody already knows this is going to happen, it is not a shock. This is an anticipated event. So D is going to be the correct answer. Since everybody already knows this is going to happen, the stock price has already, quote, priced in that this is going to happen. So the price will already have adjusted to that event. Question number three, I invest $35,000 into an index fund that earns a 7.8% interest rate and a 0.25% expense ratio. How much will this be worth in 20 years? Okay, so I'm just going through these. I looked at this quiz when I first wrote it. I was, writing the questions, but I haven't looked at it since then. So this is kind of new to me. So you're just going to see me solving this directly, just like you did when you were working through it. Okay, oops, almost left out a zero there, right? 0.25%. All right, so that's my expense ratio right there. That is 0.25%, okay? And then I've got 20 years. So there we go. And I'm just going to go through and solve it. Maybe this will be helpful, seeing me solve these directly. Maybe not. Can't hurt, though. All right, and there's my answer. 150063.94. All right, so that's the answer to number three. All right, number four, a similar question here, but with a bigger expense ratio and also a front-end load fee. All right, so that 2% front-end load fee, this is what I need to deal with first, because that is going to determine how much actually goes into the account to be invested. So I'm going to lose 2% right away. All right, that amount right there, I think that's $700, right? That $700 is going to go away. And so the amount invested here is going to be $34,300. So that's how the front end load fee works. That $700, it just evaporates from my account. So when I actually invest this money, the amount that gets invested is the $34,300, right? The front end load fee goes away and I'm left with that. My interest rate is going to be 0.089 minus my expense ratio of 1.85%, like that. And I've got this for 9 months, all right? So 9 months out of 12, that's 3/4 or 9/12, whatever you want to call it. So let me solve for this real quick. And there's my answer. There we go. Okay, and I went ahead and worked through question 5 because it's very similar. A lot of times I do similar questions like this. Half the class has one, half the class has the other. So if you had question 5, you can see what we did here is we took out the front-end load fee, okay, the sales fee gets taken out. So we've got $34,300 that is invested, 1 plus the interest rate minus the expense ratio, and that is the value that we get there. Moving on to number 6, choose the most accurate answer in regards to active and passive funds. Data from investors over the last few decades suggests that actively managed funds very rarely outperform passive managed funds in the long run. So it's not impossible. It is just very uncommon for it to happen over a long period of time, say 10, 20, or 30 years. All right, so D is without a doubt the correct answer there. We're talking about over 30 years, maybe a 1% chance a random actively managed fund will outperform a passively managed fund. Very rare, very rare. Question number 7, Mac and Brooke each invest $1,000 into stock market funds. Max invests in a passively managed fund with a 0.04% expense ratio. So this is basically the return. We can go about this a couple different ways. But for Max, the return he's getting 9.4%, right? Minus 0.04%. And so that is a 9.36% rate of return he's going to get when you take out that expense ratio. And you could use the same form as we did up here if you wanted to. You could, actually plug these values in, but this is the way we can do it here as well. So Max's return, when you consider the expense ratio, is going to be 9.36%. On the other hand, Brooke is getting a 9.9% return minus a 0.7% expense ratio, which is 9.2%. All right. So after 20 years, we know, first of all, that Max should be getting a greater value. Okay. So what that tells us right away is that B and D cannot be correct. So if I ask you in the future just to solve for which return is going to be better, and there's not any like dollar values you need, this is one way to do it. Okay. Now let's get very specific. Now let's actually solve this question directly here. So we'll start with Max. So Max is going to put in $1,000 at that 9.36% return. You can hear my kids up there probably destroying themselves. They get excited about Paw Patrol, let me tell you. All right, so there we go. 1 plus 0.0936. All right, that's just that value right there. And this is after 20 years. And so we'll see how much Max has here. So that's the amount, 5,986.46. And it's totally appropriate to go ahead and round this here, right? I know we normally don't want to round answers when, they're not completely solved. But in this case, we definitely should round because there's no way for an account to pay out, percentages of a cent. So it's totally reasonable here to round. Now you can hear my dog scratching at the door. I'm telling you, things are falling off the walls. All right, so now let's look at Brooke here. Brooke's return. She's going to make the same $1,000 investment. Her return is 9.2% over 20 years. Oops. And this comes out to 5,813.70. All right. So the last thing I need to do to solve for this one to make sure that I'm getting the correct answer is just figure out the difference. So there's Max's return. Subtract off Brooke's return. And there we go, 172.76. So after 20 years, Max will have 172.26 more value. Moving on. Question number 8. I invest $10,000 in a passive fund that tracks the S&P 500 and earns an 11.9% annual interest rate. The index charges a 0.65% expense ratio and a 0.8% back-end load fee. How much money will I have when I withdraw from this account in 20 years? Okay, so the back-end load fee we don't need to worry about until the end because it is a back-end load fee. So I'm going to just solve for this, ignoring the back-end load fee to begin with. All right, so that is, if the back-end load fee did not exist, this would be our correct answer here, whatever this comes out to. So this is $84,333.55. Okay, so that if the back-end load fee did not exist, that's how much we would get. However, the back-end load fee is going to charge me 1%. Okay, so the future value with the fee is going to be $84,333.55. And then we take out that back-end load fee. So the back-end load fee is 0.8%. So there's a couple different ways to go about this, but if I do 1 minus the fee, that will show me how much I retain, right? If 0.8% is going away, 0.8% of this is going to go away, then 99.2% of it will stay, and that's what that is right there. The difference between those two right there, that's the 99.2% that I retain, okay? So if I take my value here, and again, in terms of rounding, it's reasonable to do it this way, although I'm not going to be a stickler in terms of if you're rounding to the nearest cent before you do this. I think you get the same answer anyway. So anyway, that's the answer, 83,658.88. So again, what we're doing here is we're taking out 0.8%. That leaves us with 99.2%. So 99.2% times this value shows me how much I will have after I pay the fee. Okay, question 9 here. Your aunt gives you $10,000 and you have to invest in one of these two funds, one that has a 1% expense ratio and another that has a 1% front-end load fee. So if we think about these two options, option 1 is going to look like this. You know, you take your $10,000, you've got some sort of return. Let's just say you got a 10% return, okay, kind of the typical amount. And you've got a 1% expense ratio. This is how you would figure it out, right? So for option 1 here, the future value comes out to, so this is 1.09 raised to the 6th power. There we go. So there's your amount that you would have after 6 years. On the other hand, option 2, the difference here is 1% of your investment immediately goes away before it is invested. So 1% of $10,000, which is $100, goes away. So you end up investing only $9,900 into the account. Let's say it gets the same 10% return. So we're comparing apples to apples here, right? They're both getting 10%. And the amount that we get here, it's 1 plus 1, of course, is 1.1. Raised to the 6th power times 9,900. Here's the amount we get. So if I'm choosing between these two options, I definitely want to choose option 2. Now let's think about why that is the case. Intuitively, it's a little bit tougher to explain the logic of why that is indeed why this answer is solved this way. So here's the thing. The front-end load fee is a 1% fee that is charged just to the principal, okay? What I mean by that is the 1% fee does not apply to the total value of your account. It applies only to the $10,000 that you're investing. So any interest you earn, that doesn't get charged an additional fee, okay? On the contrary, the 1% expense ratio, that is charged on the principal plus any interest, okay? An expense ratio is charged on the entire account. So 5 years from now, my account has grown in value due to interest. That interest is charged a fee just like the principal is, okay? So as long as the account goes up, as long as the return here is positive, which is is always going to be the case over 6 years, then you certainly would choose option 2, all right? So option 2 is better. And the reason I would ask a question like this is because when you get your 401k options, for example, they may all be pretty crappy. They may all have high expense ratios or big fees. And so you have to kind of figure out which one's best for you. So in this case, you can see choosing option 2 is much better than option 1. And the difference is just going to get bigger and bigger over time. So it would be a humongous mistake to choose option 1. All right, continuing on here to question number 10. Get the pages out of order here. Question number 10. All right, so for question number 10, we've got a 1.4% front-end load fee. And I'm trying to figure out how many years it would take for my account to reach $100,000. Okay, so I'm solving for n. So just to make sure we remember how to do this, here is my formula. Solving for n. Been a little while since we've done this. This is a tricky little question here, so we definitely want to be very careful, make sure we're doing everything correct. All right, so there's my formula, okay? And the I here, we can think of this I, the interest rate, as being the interest rate minus the expense ratio, whatever that is, okay? And so sometimes I put a little star next to that in my notes so that I make sure that I'm not forgetting the expense ratio. Now, in this specific question, we do not have an expense ratio, so actually that's not going to be relevant. But we do have a front-end load fee, okay? So I invest $24,000 into this index fund that charges a 1.4% front-end load fee. So here's the deal. Right off the bat, I got to think about my fee. Anytime we're dealing with a front-end load fee, we have to think about it immediately because it decides how much is going to be invested. So there's my fee. Which is $336. And so the amount that actually gets invested into this account after I've paid my fees is going to be $24,000 minus that amount. All right, and what that comes out to is $23,664. All right, because if I invest $24,000 in this account, only $23,664 is able to gain interest. All right, so this money is just gone. It's just completely gone. So this is the amount that we're going to use for our present value. Okay, so we plug in these values here. Future value is $100,000. Present value is $23,664. I don't have to worry about any other fees. There's no other fees in this question. And then ln 1 plus the I. So that's just 1.1. Okay, let's see what that comes out to. I'm going to take the ln of that answer. And I'm going to divide that by the ln of 1.1, the natural log of 1.1. And there's my answer. 15.1213153. All right, and obviously you can round that, maybe 15.12 years or something like that. And if you're not sure you've got the correct answer there, what you can do then is plug it back into your future value calculation. Okay, so going all the way back through, I can just restart my calculation here. There's my amount invested. 1 plus the interest rate, and here is my number of years. All right, and so what should I get here? I should get $100,000, right? Let's just make sure I do to make sure I'm doing this correctly. And obviously, I don't want to use the rounded amount here. I'm going to use the full form of n. And there we go, $100,000, right? So I just plug these values back in, and I see that my future value comes out to $100,000, which is a nice way to sort of check my math. And to be clear, these answers better come out the same because, they're all the same variables, just arranged in a different way. But this is just a way to make sure that my answer is correct, just to make me extra cautious and extra sure of myself. Okay, now we get to some tax questions here. So we got two couples, and we're going to go through and solve for these taxes that they pay. We're going to start with federal income taxes for couple number 1. Okay, so a married couple earns $41,700. So that's their income to begin with. Also, they sell stock. All right, since they're selling stock, this could be a taxable event for income taxes, but not necessarily. So also they sell stock. The stock was purchased for $8,300 in February 2021 and sold in October 2021 for $9,600. So this is less than a year. So this is going to be taxed as income, all right? That's going to be $1,300 in income that needs to be taxed, okay? Right? $1,300 in income. And then the last thing here, qualified dividends. Qualified dividends means that they were held for more than 60 days. So they are qualified to not be taxed as income, all right? Qualified here being a good thing. So these are going to be taxed as capital gains. For our purposes here, this is our entire income. This $43,000 is all they have in income. So when I figure out their taxes, that is the amount I'm going to use. Going through the brackets here, their first $19,900 gets taxed at 10%. And then they've got some money here remaining that is taxed at 12%. And let's see what that comes out to. $47.62. And so that is how much they would pay in federal income taxes. Number 12, solve for the capital gains. Okay, so in this case, their capital gains, this $41,700, that's income, so that's not capital gains. Their profit off of the stock, that's treated as income as well. We already dealt with that. And then the last little bit here they have is $440 in qualified dividends, and that would be capital gains. But here is the problem, okay? They have $43,000 in income and $440 in capital gains. So their capital gains plus income ends up being $43,440. And they are nowhere near having enough capital gains and income to move into the taxable amount. So in this case, their capital gains tax rate is 0%. So the amount of capital gains they will have to pay is $0, okay? That's a good thing. That goes to show why paying capital gains taxes is almost always preferable to paying income taxes. Number 13, solve for the Medicare taxes that couple one will pay. All right, here's the deal. When we're solving for Medicare taxes, the income that we use is only their income from their jobs. We've talked about this before. You do not pay Medicare taxes on your investment income. So their Medicare income is just going to be $41,700. So their Medicare taxes is just going to be that amount times 1.45%. Right? That's the tax rate that always applies. So this is 604.65. All right, so that's the amount. I said, catch myself here, I said that's what always applies. We will talk in the future that isn't the case, but your income has to be really high for the answer to be anything other than 1.45% for your Medicare taxes, okay? So that's how much they would pay. Moving on, all right? I just repeated this information here so that I had everything I needed. Dealing now with couple number 2. So we're going to figure out their federal income taxes to start with. So they earn a total of $86,700 from their jobs. So obviously that's going to count. Also, they sell Apple stock. They bought it in 2008 and they sold it in 2021. Okay, so that is definitely not going to be treated as income. They also earn dividends from these shares, from the same shares, right? Now, again, these are 13 years old, so we definitely know that these dividends are going to be qualified dividends. They've certainly been held more than 60 days, okay? So that's their entire income. So their taxes then is just going to be based entirely on the $86,700. There we go. All right, so we got one of those tedious questions here. Not a bad idea to use Excel or something similar to Excel to solve for these types of questions. If this class wasn't so big, there weren't so many students, I would probably teach using Excel. So 10,571 is what you should get there. Question 15, solve for the capital gains that couple 2 will pay. Well, first of all, what we can recognize is they're certainly going to have enough income here to fall into the 15% bracket. They've got $86,000 in income here, so we know that any capital gains that they have will fall at the 15% rate unless they have just an absurd level of capital gains, and they don't. So for this case, their capital gains, first of all, is the profit that they get from this stock sale. So $91,000 minus $2,300. So what's that? $88,700? Is that right? Yep. So that's their profit off the stock sale, right? The difference between what they sold it for and what they purchased it for. And then they also have some qualified dividends of $820. Okay. And that's it. So that will tell us how much they have in total capital gains. $88,700 plus $820. There we go. $89,520. So that's their capital gains. So their capital gains taxes will just be that amount times 15%. Which is $13,428. And it is crucial that they would consider this because keep in mind, your income taxes, you're going to pay that throughout the year. Your employer is going to automatically take some of that income out. You can contact your HR representative and get them to take out a little bit more or a little bit less, but your income is going to be coming out, okay? However, these people, none of this has been paid during the year. So in April, when they go to file their taxes, they're going to realize that they owe $13,428. And if they don't plan for that, you can see that could be a really big problem, right? Right? They need to have this cash in hand ready to pay this expense. Question number 16, solve for the Social Security taxes. This is easy if you know how to do it. Social Security income. Again, Medicare, Social Security, we do not, the only thing we pay taxes on is our regular income, so the $86,700. And so their taxes for Social Security is going to be $86,700 times the 6.2% rate that we always apply. Again, we'll talk in the future about how it may not always be that rate, but this would only be different if your income is very high. So there we go. That's the amount. One more question here. Question number 17. If the stock market, in the stock market investing video, I discussed a Vanguard 500 index fund and a Columbia large cap index fund. Based on the specifics, which of the following is true? So here's the thing to realize for that Columbia large cap index fund, the expense ratio, if I remember correctly, was 0.45%. On the other hand, the Vanguard fund had an expense ratio of 0.02%, I think, if I remember correctly. Regardless, this Vanguard fund versus the Columbia fund, they actually hold the exact same assets in them. Both of these are just S&P 500 funds. So if you're investing in the exact same thing, you're going to get the exact same return, except for the difference in expense ratio, okay? So let's say that you get a 10% return. If the S&P 500 goes up 10%, regardless of fees, then the return for the Columbia would be 10% minus the expense ratio. And so this would be a 9.55% return, right? You get a 10% return, but 0.45% of that is going away. So you get a 9.55% fee-adjusted return. On the other hand, the Vanguard account, if it also earns 10%, remember, these are going to earn the same amount. We know that because they're tracking the same thing. But the fee is so much smaller for the Vanguard fund that you would earn a 9.98% return. So for this question here, the Vanguard 500 index fund will definitely outperform the Columbia account because they hold the exact same assets, but the Columbia account is charging you much, much more in expense, okay? So the answer to that one is A. And I think I talked about this in the video, but what's interesting about this is that these two options were provided, both of these options were provided in my HSA account. So you can see what an absolutely colossal mistake it would be to choose the Columbia account, because it is without question going to perform worse than the Vanguard account. So the answer there is A. You would definitely want to choose the Vanguard account.